Fanny. It's a pleasure to join you from our unit, Technologies for Smart Communities, and share our principles and our lines of work, which are very much in line with what you have just said. Let me share my screen to start the presentation. 1 second, it's coming, and now let's go to full screen. Okay. I'm concentrating on the, oops, I think there's something. You are not seeing full screen,
No,
no?
exactly.
Is that right?
Still, now it's full screen. Yeah.
It's okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to introduce my topic by putting that in context. Our unit is very much working together with smart communities in a joint effort to develop the opportunities of the data revolution at EU level. Actually, the message from our commissioner is that there is a lot of possible great developments throughout Europe if we can develop an ecosystem that is collaborating into a joint effort in order to break silos and to preserve the European way of doing things and the innovation capacity of our member states into developing the future data challenge that will be controlling the developments on future economic activities on this topic. The Data Act is the first legislation which is already in place by the Commission and which will be deployed through the Digital Europe program. That's where it originated. And basically what we are aiming at is to create an ecosystem together with the main stakeholders and with citizens in order to share data. And sharing data includes many different approaches, from data ownership, also public procurement for getting pools of data which can be made open to the public, and including private pools which can be shared, and even developing some tenders into the infrastructure. But basically, all in all, it's aiming to develop a more secure and regular system of sharing data so that the EU citizens can benefit from it. From that point of view, the data in our focus on the smart communities is the basis for the urban data platforms, meaning the service aggregator in order to incorporate new functionalities for citizens, which first are tailored to their needs, second can be scaled up and shared with different approaches and accents in different parts of Europe. And more important than anything, data should be made interoperable in order to allow these data sharing policies, and software and tools for allowing this development should be not vendor locked in order to deploy a really powerful ecosystem of developers which can add functionalities and preserve the future possibilities of the local digital platform, which is the operating system in which we are embedded, and we are trying very hard to aggregate all the knowledge and capabilities from you. This city ecosystem includes not only data providers and how to work with data, this is one of the first skills, but also the development of services, the sharing of them, and above all, the federation of both topics. Now, when we move closer to the infrastructure on which data is hosted, the first approach that is very relevant is how we can make data interoperable. Due to different evolution in history, data are more or less gathered in different silos, which are very difficult. They have very difficult interconnections. And in order to avoid this huge problem at EU level, we are deploying what is called as the MIMS, the Minimal Interoperability Mechanisms, which is a way of ensuring through agreements onto the main ways of sharing data, a common approach so that all services can be accessing data in a fully interoperable way. This initiative on memes, currently under development through the Living EU community by OASC, will be put into standards that will be completely supporting the deployment of the future smart communities data spaces. Once we have the data available and fully interoperable, we can access those principles, those bases for information through the local data platform, which will be providing citizen services, as we have many very relevant developments currently in Europe, but also developing the future local digital twins and the introduction of AI-based services through different initiatives. So the first round of data spaces, we are focused on smart communities, but at the EU level, there are many sectorial data spaces that will be completely federated and can be accessed with full security, with all types of relevant tools for developing not only the data services, but all different possibilities on other businesses within the aim, the focus of the European Union, and developing further possibilities into AI and supported by infrastructure like the testing and experimentation facilities, currently the SITCOM AI project, and other initiatives like the EDIS and the future Europe Digital Infrastructure Consortium. In order to be able to share data properly, to federate data which might be made available through the data spaces we need, and the European Commission is deploying what is called the Smart Middleware Platform, or SIMPL as it's called in its implementation. This layer is the most important element for sharing and for securing first security and privacy, for trust in this exchange. This is one of the main pillars on the European way of doing things. Second, the possibility of interoperable channels for accessing not only current data, but future scalability, elasticity of the storage platform, and the discoverability, which has to be put together with the governance, which will control how data is managed, shared, and even private interests can be put into service here. Later, the modularity, the loose coupling, obviously the openness and agnosticism of the implementation will ensure compatibility and extensibility for the federation. In other words, different data sources will be interconnected through the cloud into a fully shared federation of accessible data and discoverable through the necessary tools to implement future services. The same infrastructure will also support the implementation of these services, not only at the smart communities level, but through all the different data spaces. Further to that, there will be new services coming, like the Cityverse, or in other words, the virtual worlds will help to introduce new approaches for the exploitation, for example, of the rich cultural and media content in Europe, for the implementation of virtual approaches for co-design of solutions, for sharing prospective developments which can be then put to the collective evaluation into, for example, urban development, and also integrate and facilitate the future development of new technologies, EU-based technologies, which will propose a recommendation for a future robust, open, and very interoperable Cityverse legal framework supporting this development. By the way, Cityverse is our own way of calling this virtual world, which in other words means citizen-based virtual applications. Then coming to the last point, there will be different calls. One which has been recently opened and is still active until 23rd of September, will implement the development of concrete use cases or pilots, which will focus in relevant smart communities topics like energy flows, climate resilience, zero pollution, and so on, and allow the development of the necessary tools to work on EU data infrastructure for the support of interconnected local digital twin. The different pilots will last for 12 months and be supported by this call for proposal. In the end, this call will also prepare a roadmap which will help into not only the technical standardization and support from the MIMS, but also the development of the basic architecture and roadmap for development of these opportunities. This is the call which is currently open. There is also a deployment call for developing new capabilities on the services which can be undertaken by cities in order to solve efficiently all the above stated use cases and topics which are relevant for cities, and which will be done through cascading fund in a project which was recently approved by our unit. And last but not least, during the following year, you will also put into service an open local digital twin toolbox, facilitating the development and the implementation of the support elements for securing capabilities development. Well, thanks very much for your attention. I will stop sharing now my screen, and later we can engage in future interaction with the community. Thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Javier, for the framing and information on the European Commission initiatives in this area. And then I would like to just hand over without further ado to Frédéric.
Thank you, Giovanni. I will share my screen also. I will be brief because you said to me not to make more than 8 minutes, so I will do my best to share my screen and make a quick presentation. As you said, I'm from Microsoft, and it's a real pleasure for me to present you the Microsoft vision. As you know, that Microsoft has a lot of products at this time. We have launched Microsoft 365 Copilot. We have launched we were launching Windows 11 Copilot. Copilot is ChatGPT, and so AI is very important. But you know, at this time, I'm from Microsoft Central Europe, so it means I'm responsible for Eastern Europe countries. And I'm also deputy mayor of a town of Agnières-sur-Seine called Agnières-sur-Seine. So it's a town of 90,000 citizens just next to Paris. I'm French, je suis français. And it's a real pleasure to present you that. Just to let you know that, first of all, when you talk about smart cities, you have two worlds. You have the physical world and you have the digital world. And by the way, all what you can see in terms of physical worlds, like, I don't know, citizen, road, cars, trucks, etc., has lots of times, in the majority of times, as 90% of times, a digital world with, an optimization, a monitoring, and so on with sensors. And what we can see, and I can tell you as a politician, that at the center of that, there is sustainability. Sustainability is very important and is also very important for Microsoft because, we have also a dedicated division for sustainability because, it's for the world. We have to, it's for Earth, and Earth is very important, and we really need to have the best solutions for citizens and for the Earth to help Earth in terms of neutral carbon and so on. So of course we have AI, artificial intelligence in our IT platform. We have digital twin solution. We have a unified platform. We have an open platform. I will not have time to all describe to you all of that, but of course, it's very important for us for you to know that with Microsoft, we have in this unified platform some connectors, which allows you to ingest any data from Microsoft data or non-Microsoft data to match into analytics and AI, and to have all solutions for any segments of the smart cities, from education, safety, citizen service, waste management, transport, sustainability, energy consumption, which is very important about that. So, you know, it's a focus of Microsoft, and it's very important for us to make that happen. On the same time, we have also what we call Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability, which is, you know, a growing set of ESG capabilities for Microsoft and for the global ecosystem of partners to help organizations accelerate sustainability progress and business growth. To sum up, it's like a digital a portal, a digital portal where you can include all different analytics, monitoring, and so on to be able to have real solutions for us, for sustainability solutions, like optimization of energy, optimization of water, and so on, and carbon. You know, when you connect data, connect data is not connect data only, is really to reduce, different pollution, for example, for the earth, optimization of waste to reduce waste and improve the efficiency of waste management, for water to reduce water consumption. We have lots of different solutions about that, and also to understand all the energy and where the energy can be, consumed, how it can consume for carbon neutrality. So one of the examples is City of Valencia, for example, where it has gone to Microsoft Azure, which is our cloud computing, and they have a smart city initiative to reduce, consumption of energy with lighting system. So, it's a reduction of 70% reduction of energy thanks to LED lights and intelligent lights, and I've got exactly the same in my city. So my city called Agnières-sur-Seine, as you can see, as an example. So we had lots of different solutions also with Microsoft, but we have also a point of sustainability, and we have exactly the same. You have, a smart energy for energy consumption, and we have reduced energy also by 40 to 80% with the 6,000 lights changing to LED. And this LED have a sensor, this LED is here. It's not only light when you have LED, it's also it's a box where you can put sensor, and then with Microsoft Azure to make with AI an intelligent light, to be able to reduce the consumption of energy. To sum up, there is nobody in the streets, so we can decrease the energy consumption by 80%, but because it's LED, it's white, and because it's white, it go in terms of security, it's no problem. We can see a street, but at the same time, because it's LED, the LED go to the street, not to the sky, and so it's good for biodiversity. Because when you have LED, when you have light normal to the sky, then you don't have any insect anymore. You're killing everything, and with the LED, the biodiversity is coming back. So it's a good thing, and also it brings visibility, security on the roads, and value. On the same time, I will be finished by that. In Agnières, every blue point is a LED light point, is a light point, okay? And it can be a connected light point. And so we connected some different light points to have different, analytics for pollutions, for traffic, and so on, because, we're a low emission zone, as lots of cities in France, big cities in France. And so, artificial intelligence is everywhere. So we can use artificial intelligence for agriculture, for example. And so we know when rain is coming, how to optimize the resource of water. We have AI for traffic jam. That's exactly what we have here in Agnières-sur-Seine to reduce the traffic and make more fluidable. We want to develop bicycle. We want to develop, bicycle sharing or car sharing, electric cars, and also to have vision for future investments and help of decision. And that's exactly what we have that. So for example, here, we can select the different street we have and we want. And then, for example, for the street Grande Rue Charles de Gaulle, we have the numbers of two wheels in light blue, of trucks in dark blue, citizen in orange, and cars in pink. And so you can see you can have a vision in live, but you can have a vision what tomorrow will be, what the next month will be, thanks to AI. And then it allows us to decrease the pollution and make more traffic, less traffic jam. Last but not least, the sayings. We have a counter of bicycle. Vélo in French is bicycle. And so for here, as an example, it's thanks to sensor, we know that these streets need to be, a streets for cars, of course, but also for bicycle. So we will invest some budget to create a way for bicycle in a secure way to make that happen. And we have lots of different other solutions, but it was just to let you know some example, because, as Microsoft and as deputy mayor also, because I didn't decide anything as deputy mayor, of course, of Microsoft solution, they just won in my city. So I was very happy about that. But, this solution is good for us, and we are coming more and more because, citizens want to make that happen. They want to see that because it's very important for them. At the same time, we have European Union, and European Union, said to us, that we need to be neutral carbon in a couple of years, and at the end, we have help for European Union, which is help all different smart city solutions for any partners to develop that with that. I thank you very much. It was very short, but
but very informative. Thanks a lot, Frédéric.
You're welcome.
Especially interesting the remark on biodiversity that shows how multidimensional this problem are. It's not enough the energy consumption and the carbon footprint, but also where you put the light and the color of the light. That's a very interesting point. Thanks, and I'm happy now to hand over to Nuria for the next introductory presentation. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Giovanni, and all the other colleagues for the informative presentations. My name is Nuria de Lama. I'm director at IDC, and thanks again to Martel for inviting me to be here. Maybe a bit of context about my profile. I work in the past quite a lot in smart city projects, and I was involved in a huge project called Synchronicity that I think was one of the first ones promoting the MIMS to foster interoperability. I was one of the founders of the Big Data Value Association, so I'm involved in data-related topics since a long time ago, and in particular, I work in some of the so-called data spaces that my colleagues have also mentioned. And I'm responsible for the governance and the business part related to the data space for tourism, which has a lot of commonalities with the one of the smart cities and following the one of the smart cities. And my company is also coordinating the data space for Green Deal, which I think is also quite relevant to the discussion today, where I'm also contributing to the governance and business aspects. In addition, we are involved in manufacturing, so I follow quite a lot the regulations on data and artificial intelligence, but also all the technicalities and the aspects related to the governance and agreements between companies for these data spaces. However, today I think that I'm coming here also with another hat, which is the one of skills, because I'm also involved in a project that is quite interesting to forecast the demand for advanced digital skills. And I will try to be short today. I will share my screen just for a few slides to put some points on the table that I hope that will help also to trigger the discussion afterwards. So you tell me when you can see my slides. Should be okay now.
Yeah, that's full screen. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to present is some of the predictions or trends that my company has prepared for smart cities. They were prepared in 2021, so they may seem a bit obsolete, but they are valid until 2026. And of course, my colleagues have mentioned a lot of different technologies that are already in place or will be in place in the upcoming years in smart cities. So you know very much about the use of hybrid workplaces. Then they have mentioned digital twins. I think that we are all aware that all companies and also cities are investing in data and artificial intelligence, sustainability, maybe the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning for the management of vulnerabilities and cyber attacks, which is one of the main challenges for cities, I think, based on the deployment of a lot of IoT technologies and the edge. But I wanted to mention specifically the need for innovation skills, which is a prediction that should already be in place. I think between 2022, 2023, we were expecting this already to be a very big challenge, in particular for smart cities and communities. important to say that you see a lot of numbers here. They do not have to do anything with the ranking of the priorities in terms of trends or predictions. So this is related basically to the reports that we create at IDC, but it doesn't mean that it's more or less important than the others. In any case, you see that at this very moment, we are already in a period where the availability of skills to foster innovation in the particular context of smart cities and communities is very important. And in fact, I think that we've seen this already in big cities since several years ago. What it is important is that this is becoming mainstream. And one of our predictions is by this year, 2023, 20% of mid-sized smart cities, so not the big ones anymore, but now the ones that are smaller, will appoint dedicated staff to drive innovation and digital transformation, which means that understanding how this should be done, do that in a sustainable way and with the users and the citizens in the center becomes really of paramount importance. And it's not just about availability of technologies, but about ensuring that this is deployed in the right way. So availability of skills is already a challenge and a trend that will make all the other trends that you see here in this diagram feasible. And because of that reason, I think that the Commission is extremely interested and worried about the situation of Europe with respect to availability of ICT specialists. And basically what you see on the left side is that if the education programs continue as they are now in Europe, so basically we invest in the same things we have done so far, and basically we develop skills in the same way we did so far. This means that we will reach in 2030 almost a gap of 20 million IT specialists. And of course, this relates to a lot of different technologies, including semiconductors, that you know is also a big and a very tricky issue for Europe. But this is really a huge gap. And this means that despite the fact that we deploy data spaces and we talk about a lot of availability of technologies, if we don't have the right capabilities to manage all these technologies and to understand how to use them, I think that Europe will not be sovereign, Europe will not be independent, and Europe will not be competitive, because somehow we are missing one of the big pillars. As mentioned, I'm involved in a project called LEADS that is trying to provide a qualitative and quantitative assessment of how the demand and the supply are in Europe and try to provide a calculated gap of these kind of skills that will be needed in Europe. So for this, basically, we have been working on 6 technological areas. So we don't cover everything. We cover what we call advanced digital technologies, including cloud, business intelligence and data science, security technologies, quantum, artificial intelligence, and Internet of Things. And of course, these names may not be very modern anymore, because one of the things that we have realized is that all these technologies are convergent. And now we are working more on the computing continuum, where cloud and the edge come together, and they cannot be somehow considered in an independent way. For all these technologies that I've mentioned, we have defined a set of skills that include basically 80 skills that will be needed in the future. And we have analyzed, with the support of many of the figures that we have at IDC, 150 use cases in order to understand what will be the willingness of companies, also public administration, of investing in these use cases, and thanks to that, be able to derive what will be the demand in the future. So at this very moment, what the project has already published is an assessment of what is the current demand and what is expected to be the demand in 2030. And the process that we are following now is defining 3 scenarios for each of the technologies, where we will see, depending on what happens in Europe, and this entails macroeconomic factors, but also some of the decisions that may be taken in terms of regulation or technology deployment, what may be the demand in those particular scenarios. That is what we are doing now. You have there the link to the website where you can already access some of this data, and even a dashboard that we have prepared so that you can really access the data and play a bit with the data. I think it's quite interesting to have a look at these things, because they help you to take decisions based on very accurate data. And one of the findings that I have, and I wanted to bring to this panel just to trigger a bit the discussion, as mentioned before, is which are the skills that are expected to be needed in 2027. This is something that has already been published in the links that I mentioned before. And you can see that for some of the skills, we will need 3 times more what we need now, or even 4 times more. In particular, the skills that will triple somehow in terms of the demand are all those ones that have to do with managing the cloud infrastructure, IoT analytics, and integration of cloud and APIs. And then in terms of skills, where we will need 4 times more what we need now, and the needs now are already quite big, relate to data analysis, AI application development and AI implementation. And if you think about AI implementation, this requires also understanding what is the regulation we have to be compliant with, and also not only the technology, but in many cases, understanding which data is needed and which are really the specificities of the domain where the technology needs to be deployed. On the right side, you see basically the comparison between what was the need for those demands in 2022 and what is our forecast for 2027 based on this analysis of all these figures that I mentioned before, including the 150 use cases that we have highlighted for all these technologies. And there, I think that what it is interesting is that we don't talk just about cloud or data analytics. We know we will need a lot of data scientists, but basically what we are providing is very accurate data for very segmented skills that will help companies to prepare their strategic plans for training and for education in a better way and be prepared for all the needs that will come in the future. I encourage you to visit the website, to play a bit with the dashboard, or to come back to me if you want to participate in the project, help us to define these scenarios in a better way and understand how to use all these figures. Or maybe if you don't find all these reports, I will help you also to understand how to navigate through all this data that we have prepared. But I think that the conclusion is very clear. And basically, we are in a situation where strategic plans on skills development are needed if we really want all these technologies to be deployed properly and based on European values, or we are somehow predicating all the time. And I think that this brings some additional points for the discussion afterwards. Thank you very much, Giovanni. And
thank you, Nuria. Very good as well. Another very interesting perspective. And then I quickly don't want to waste more time with me. And so, Albert, you're next to round up this first introduction, and then we can start discussing.
So thank you, Giovanni. I hope my screen shows clearly now on your end.
Yeah, it is full screen, in fact. Yeah,
perfect.
Very good.
Thank you. So as the final presenter in this interesting setup of data that's already been shared, I'm taking a bit of a different look here because we are facing challenges. We talked about carbon, but it's not just carbon. Federico already mentioned that biodiversity, but it's stick stuff. That's relating to changes that we need to do on mobility, on building management, on public space management. So, but that helps us to define the roadmap that we should create on what to do in steps to overcome and work on these challenges. We could look at the city as, I would say, a classical set of infrastructure, buildings, roads, and technology or an infrastructure that provides us with the data. The problem to solve, well, the issue is to solve the problems that we're facing is to use us, you, me, the society, to use the information that we can derive from the data. And there's more information that we get out of it now, today, and Nuria touched on it. We need more skills. In 4 years, we need more AI knowledge to understand what we can do with the data. But the goal in the end is for us to change our daily routines, to change our behavior, because if with all the knowledge and expertise we have, we don't interpret the information and we don't start changing the way we live and we have our daily routines, we will not meet these global challenges. Now, in doing so, there is underlying challenges that we need to fix. There's a lot of data. We can create the information from it. So using the data spaces, the data platforms, the AI routines, but we have to create access to the data, meaning we need complete, accurate information so people can learn and understand what it means for them. A simple choice. Do I take the car? Do I take a train? Do I stay at home for work or travel or whatever? But today, most of the data and information is available for us if you share some profile data and you get an answer back. Here's a privacy and also a vulnerability risk. If you're looking for mobility services based on data that's provided by the city, mostly it's incomplete. It's just about buses arriving on time. It's a tram that's driving on time or a train, but it's not connecting the bus through the elevator you might need or the escalator you might need because you have issues with walking or you're in a wheelchair. Just the idea of London, mind the gap for somebody in the wheelchair means something completely different than for, well, looking at us in screen than for us. Because if you leave the train and the elevator is not working, you're stuck on the platform. So here's risks and when information is not accurate. The second thing that's really needed is to understand what it means to accessing applications that share the information with you. What do you share? Are you just consuming data, or are you sharing your profile and your vulnerability? And the skills needed, and Nuria touched on that, we need to understand how to build the apps for specific user groups. Let's call it user groups. But then there's the case that we all have equal rights, and the people that it's a term we don't use that often anymore. This is why I put a question mark behind it. The right to be forgotten still applies. I mean, yes, we have to have information, but it doesn't mean that I have to tell you every time who I am and what my profile should be. So in case in developing new application, we should look into that as well. But building on the data-driven society, it provides us with a lot of new economic opportunities. If mobility patterns change and there's additional services needed, it could be more personalized services on transport, on goods to be provided, on how to use the data it's provided to you. But there's also complementary services. There's something missing. There's something new coming up. And cities sometimes have these challenges, like they block parts of the city for traffic, and all of a sudden there's a big thing of new complementary services. And an interesting thing that I learned when I was in America, in San Francisco, when they blocked some parts of the road in the city for cars, people would start using bicycles. But San Francisco is a hilly side, so buses were equipped with bus racks. So you could stop a bus, put your bike on it, and the bus would bring you up to the hill and you go downstairs. That was simple. But it also created economic opportunity for people that were good at repairing bikes, because now the bikes were on the streets and mobile bike shops all of a sudden existed. There were minivans on the side road and you could have your bike fixed in a few minutes while drinking a cup of coffee. So these are complementary services that we did not see popping up before, and all of a sudden it's more interesting. But doing so and understanding how it means, there's the data from the city, there's the data from you as an entrepreneur. It could be on shared mobility, could be anything. The digital skills to know, and here's my example, you're a bike repairman, you need to have the digital skills to understand how to interact with the city that's providing information and data to understand this economic opportunity. And then information processing, Javier, you touched on it. Data should be available everywhere and at any time, but it means to be available in the format you can use it. So data analytics, data models, data exchange patterns, and here's where the MIM step in to help you understand how data should be created in a way or stored in a way that is reusable for everybody in different purposes. And then the city data-driven services, Javier, sorry, Frederic, you mentioned it, planning, the streetlight planning, traffic planning, but you need to understand the impact and do iterations on it of the data to make sure you have the data, you see what's the impact you see. And here's where the digital twins step in. You need to have historic data, an explanation of the future, but you need to understand what it means. And this is not just the physical side of the city. It's a physical side, it's a transportation mobility side, but there's also economic and therefore social digital twin. Because if you start building a new neighborhood, you need to understand what is the type of person that will be living in there, what is the type of families that we will be living in there, and how is it going to be developed over 25 years, and then derive from that what's the economy you need, what's the mobility service you need. And this is based on the data you have and can have. These are interesting economic opportunities. And to support this from Europe, we need to work on it, and here's Javier, where you touch on. It's the digital sovereignty, because you start sharing the data, you start so buying it into the data economy. You need to have the security standardization and consistency on how it's being deployed and how you're going to work. The network gaps mentioned already, or the access gaps, if something works in Munich, it should work in Berlin. And it should work in Amsterdam. So things need to be interchangeable and replaceable or exchanged. Cities need to work together. This is what OWASP is working on. But the data should be available in the same way, and the network should be accessible in the same way. So that's very, very important. So I just added city versus MIMS. Thank you, Javier, for pointing this out. These are standards that we need as to work with cities and to work as companies together on creating solutions that can be implemented across Europe, whatever city it's like. And here is where, Giovanni, you touched on Orchestra Cities. One of the things that we are providing is an open source platform, not the data space, but on top of the data space to make sure you can capture all the data you need to provide the services, running AI from whatever vendor or analytics company you want to use into. But it is the basis for cities to start cooperating, collaborating to create this data-driven services and embrace the collaboration with the audience there, so the smart society. Here's what I would like to end my presentation, Giovanni. Any questions are welcome.
Thank you very much, Albert. And thanks to all four of you for the very interesting, I think, plurality of perspective. That's what I think I really like, that you touched on each other's topics, but each of you had a specific angle. Claudia, my colleague, is checking if there are questions from the audience. I would like to get started with, and I would invite you to have like a quick round of responses so that we can also interact more. The first question is really about the connection between digital skills and smart cities and community. So what are, in your opinion, the most important digital skills that are critical and necessary to develop in Europe? And if you agree, I would also ask you to consider both, let's say, horizontal digital skills for the people, that like the bike repairer person that Albert mentioned, versus the verticalized and, let's say, more job market kind of specialized skills that Nuria, for example, presented in her analysis. So I would go for this one first in the order of presentation. So Javier, you're first. About which digital skills are you think more critical for the situation?
Well, from our point of view, first is to have a very good understanding of what's the data broker capabilities, because in the end, whenever the European data space is implemented and all the different infrastructure elements are in place, there will be a great need for understanding how the data market is working, the availability, the construction of future services based on data, and that's a very horizontal approach. It's not completely technical. Obviously, there will be some technical capabilities related to federation, to the data brokerage, and also the necessity operation for preparing data and handling, but that's more related to the data science capabilities, which are wider and very much in need in the very near future. And last but not least, there should be some business specific capabilities on how to put data to good use, to develop the necessary business plans, and to understand the new economical opportunities which will be arising in the near future, and which right now is completely taken and dominated by the US.
Thanks a lot, Javier. Frederic?
Yeah, thanks, Giovanni. Well, I would say that usage and thinking are changing right now. In terms of thinking, of course, we see more and more skill needed about energy consumption, how to optimize energy, because we have less and less water, we have less and less electricity, and with the war and so on. So we really need to have solutions like that, And so we have to develop this kind of skill in all cities into the world. And the second thing is in terms of usage of citizens. So citizens are changing also. Before we have one car, everyone had one car more, and it's coming more and more as a car sharing, bicycle sharing, go to bicycle and walker. And so it calls mobility. And so mobility is also very important, I think, for all cities, because we need to invest into transportation, public transportation, also, bicycle, also metro, train, tramway, all of this kind of stuff, which allows people to be more quicker on the same time, because, less traffic jam, but on the same time to reduce the pollution, because lots of big city has now a low emission zone, and so to develop on that way. So it will be pretty interesting in a couple of months or years to see the transformation.
Thank you. Nuria, then.
Yeah, I think that the skills that we will need are a bit of combination between technological skills. And for this, I have provided quite a lot of details. We see that basically there will be a growing demand for everything that has to do with data, AI, in general, the integration of cloud edge, but also a lot on cybersecurity. And then, as I mentioned, there are already the reports where you can see the segmented skills and the forecast for all of them. Then it will also be important to be aware of the regulations. And we know that in the last years, the European Commission has been very active on everything that has to do with data, and now with AI, even though some of these regulations are not approved yet. But I think it will be important. It's not only availability of data, it's understanding what you have to do with the data and what you can do. So if you are a platform intermediary, you need to know now which are your responsibilities and what you can do, what you cannot do with the data. It's not only that you have the data at your fingertips. And then I think it's very important also the aspect related to business that Javier already mentioned. All these technologies will not only be used in order to be more efficient and maybe to use better resources that we have, it will also change the way we do many of the things, and maybe we will do things differently. And we have seen that already with a lot of businesses in the last years. So I think that having the data means that a lot of business models will change, and also business processes in companies and also public administration will change. So I think it's a combination of understanding and awareness about regulation, about business, and then about the technicalities that we explained before. And I think that the aspects of sustainability and Green Deal policies are very important, as Frederic has mentioned. And this is especially important for one of the questions you formulated. And since I don't know if we will have a lot of time to discuss later on, I think it's important to link this. If we really want to follow the European values, I think it's also very important that this knowledge is included in all the profiles that will be working in the development of future data-related applications or artificial intelligence applications. Put the citizen and the user in the center, be transparent in the way data is collected or the way algorithms are developed. So I think that all these characteristics for the applications are very important, and it needs to be skills that are already in place from the very beginning before technologies are used in the wrong way. Finally, besides having the right skills, looking at individuals that may be taking some decisions, I think it's important to have the right organizational structures in place. As I mentioned before, also, we see an enormous gap that is already present in Europe in terms of having the right skills in order to deploy all these technologies. And just to mention a couple of things that can be done and should be done, I think, as soon as possible. First of all is a higher education will not help us to fill in this gap. So this may happen more in the long term. So this could be part of the long-term actions that Europe may define, improving the masters, improving PhDs, and having a lot of higher education. But I think that now we are also in a hurry to have the right measures in terms of upskilling and reskilling people. And here, at least I see in Spain, I don't know if it happens in other countries of the EU, discrimination based on age. So I think that a lot of people that have some basic capabilities could be maybe reskilled or upskilled, and they could be useful for many of the jobs that will be needed in the future. And second thing that seems very obvious, but maybe we are not there yet, is using the 50% of the population that are women. Many of them are not working nowadays. They are not attracted to IT anymore, apparently based on the figures. So giving a lot of opportunities and lowering the barriers to incorporate the 50% of our population, which is women, in IT jobs, I think that would also help us very much to achieve the goals we want.
Thank you, Nuria. Albert?
You're muted.
You're muted, Albert.
And my mouse was not working. Sorry.
Yep.
Now, let's take a bit of a different look here then, because we can repeat what we've all been saying here. But we talk about AI. This is still something now for the specialists. And I think the specialists, if they start working on it, one focus element that they need to be trained on, make sure that whatever they develop and design is explainable to the end user. Because explainable AI, in the end, it's all about trust. So that means to the level above or below, whatever you want to call that, it's more the use of this developed AI routines and the apps, the application developers. We tend to drive more to low coding. So the end app developer development slowly creeps up to the end user level where it's more easy to build. So these challenges, these skills need to be developed in already early stage of the education schemes we have in all the countries. But the remaining element that's there is trust. Everybody using an app should be familiar with how to check and balances on how we can trust the app and the applications that are provided to us. What data are we going to share and how we're going to share the data. So it's not just skills, it's understanding and general information and knowledge about how to handle data, what data to trust, and how to use data-driven applications. So I think over the entire scope of education system, there's an update needed to make sure that we do this right. And the age balance, slowly but surely, people are at ages now that have, okay, look at me, I'm a bit older than the rest of the team here. I'm from the generation that developed a smartphone. So we know how to use it. So that's no longer a challenge. But now we have to build up the knowledge on the trust and how to use the data, and maybe the low-code platforms that are available, and see how we can build our own applications or neighborhood applications.
Thank you. And we are slightly over the time, but I think we can stretch a little bit to have one last question that would be like the counterparty of what I said, which is more about the risks and the challenges that we are facing in this digital transformation, this twin transformation with sustainability, and how can digital skills help us. And in this case, if Javier allows me, I would like to keep you last so that we close then with the words from the Commission. And so therefore I will start with Frédéric first.
Thanks, Giovanni. Well, for the risk as they are, because we know digitalization can help people and is designed to help people, but at the same time, we need to be careful to use it very clearly and in a good way. First of all, a second time in Microsoft, we put lots of different controls with AI, with all different solutions about that. And digitalization and data is really help in terms of, if you do it right, if it really help for all cities into the world and allows to develop and to the strategy to have a better sustainability, a great sustainability, to be green. And for green planets, and for that, I think all Microsoft solution we have designed, and that's why we have a specific division for sustainability is here to help you. So I was very pleased to have a sum up about that. But if you want to continue this discussion with me or with Microsoft, don't hesitate to contact us. It will be a real pleasure to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would also say, please, you all speakers, you can write your contact or any relevant link in the chat so that people can also take note of that to contact you back. And then Nuria.
If I have to highlight some challenges for smart cities, I think that I would say resiliency, customer engagement, looking at the relationship with the users and in general with the citizens, work transformation. I think this is something we see now and things will be different in the future. How to make cities really smart, so intelligence everywhere, and we have talked a lot about data and AI. Please don't forget that there are lots of initiatives already providing data. I mentioned this Green Deal data space that is already designing the full path of the data space, where a lot of data that is already available will be interoperable. Then digital divide that you mentioned in the beginning, I think important to have technologies that are inclusive And climate change and sustainability. I think that we tend to think about maybe the city where we are living, or maybe cities in Europe that we know very well, even though Albert has mentioned San Francisco, but there will be a lot of cities in the world, small and big ones, that will be affected by climate change and will have real challenges, some of them even sunken. So I think that there are some issues there that need to be addressed. And of course, we have a lot of technologies that can be helpful there. Some things that may happen, I see there is a trend that using all these technologies can provide a lot of benefits, but also can have negative effects, as you mentioned. And I think we should be very careful in ensuring that there is a balanced power distribution, which is something is not happening nowadays in the citizenship, even though a lot of people have access to technologies, but we see that power is getting aggregated in very few hands. And I think that is one of the risks we have, and will even increase with the advent of artificial intelligence. For this, what can we do? I think Frederick mentioned before avoiding vendor lock-in, or I don't know if it was Javier. For sure, that's very important. Open standards, ensuring that there is things are open, that there are opportunities for people, that things are transparent in terms of algorithms, that it can be explained, as Albert mentioned before. And I would like also maybe to give the last words to access to SMEs, because in a lot of sectors, we have a lot of SMEs and even startups. And I think that we should ensure that all these technologies and the overall frameworks are accessible by everyone, which means that sometimes you need to put like very specific measures for SMEs that do not have maybe the same resources or even skills as we were discussing in the very beginning. So I think that this requires specific policies, and we've seen that the digital innovation hubs have been quite successful so far in bringing technologies to the market and making them more accessible by SMEs. So I think that there are a lot of different components that we need to address when defining the digital transformation paths.
Thank you. Albert?
Yes, on top of what's already said, I mean, reliability, resilience has to be built in. So the infrastructure that we run on it, and I'm not saying the rest is not, it's just on top of what you already said, Nuria and Frederic, we have to rely on the infrastructure. And that means EU as a cloud environment, cloud edge to IoT continuum really needs to make sure that availability and reliability is high. As a negative example, trains running around Amsterdam, they were blocked for 36 hours because one single IT system did not run. 36 hours without trains in Amsterdam. You can see what the economic impact is in the weekend. Thousands of people staying at the railway station. If that's the level of IT that we have to put our trust in when moving along to the data-driven economy, we're not going to make it. So it's all these levels that we have to improve. So.
Thank you. And then Javier, closing on the risks, challenges, and how digital skills could help us improve the smart communities and smart cities area. Thank you.
Very quickly, the risks are very clear. How data will be handled, how the governance is implemented, and how to secure a really transparent and equitable ecosystem on handling data. That's one of the challenges that may be implemented through the European data spaces and has to be supported by everybody. Further to that, there are very relevant opportunities on new services like simulation, how to assess beforehand how things will be behaving and how to control and shape in that sense with our action the future developments. And the biggest challenge is very obvious nowadays, how the artificial intelligence and the possibilities of the virtual worlds or the cityverse, as we are branding right now, can be put to good use, because there is a very important discussion and we don't know about the future. The laws, the different implementing acts from the European Commission have to be developed and made a reality at the member state level. That's all on my side.